I threw $40,000 in cash at the most dangerous man in Chicago. Right there, in his own restaurant, in front of his men, bills scattering across the table like confetti at a funeral. He didn't blink, didn't move, just looked at me with those dark eyes while everyone else in the room stopped breathing. "I don't need your pity," I said. My voice was shaking. My hands were shaking. Everything was shaking except my decision. "I don't need your charity, and I don't need you." His men reached for their weapons. He raised one hand. They stopped. And then Park Jin-soo, head of the Korean MAFIA, the man who could have me erased with a phone call, did something no one expected. He smiled. "Sit down, Naomi," he said quietly. "Let me tell you why you're wrong. This is the story of how I fell in love with the man I tried to destroy, and how he ruined me for anyone else. But first, let me tell you how we got here. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. I tell stories about love, obsession, and the kind of men who change your life forever. If that sounds like something you need in your life, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Now, where was I? Right, the beginning. 3 years before I threw money at a mafia boss. I was just a girl trying to survive. My name is Naomi Carter, 26 years old, south side of Chicago born and raised. And for as long as I could remember, I'd been drowning. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind where you thrash and scream and someone notices. The quiet kind. The kind where you smile at customers and say, "Have a nice day," and then go home to a stack of bills that never gets smaller no matter how many doubles you work. It started with my mother's diagnosis. Stage 3 breast cancer. The words hit like a physical blow. I remember exactly where I was standing when the doctor said them. I remember the way Mama's hand tightened on mine. I remember thinking, we can't afford this. We can't afford to save her life. But we did it anyway. Because what's the alternative? You don't let your mother die because the numbers don't work. Mama beat the cancer. 2 years in remission now. Healthy, working part-time at the church, fussing at me about eating enough and working too hard. She's alive. That's what matters. But the bills remained. $127,000 in medical debt. You know what that number looks like when you make $11 an hour plus tips? It looks like a life sentence. It looks like drowning in slow motion while everyone around you goes on living. So I worked. Breakfast shift at Lucky's Diner. 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. afternoon shift at the dry cleaner, 3 to 7. Weekend nights at the bar on Clark Street, 9 to close. Sleep was a luxury I scheduled like an appointment. For hours here, 5 hours there. Enough to keep functioning. Never enough to feel human. But every month I sent a payment. Every month the number got a little smaller. And every month I told myself the same thing. No handouts. No charity. No owing anyone anything. I'd watched my father make promises he couldn't keep. Watched him disappear when things got hard, leaving Mama to hold everything together with nothing but faith and stubbornness. I learned early that the only person you can count on is yourself. Naomi Carter pays her own way. Always. That was the rule. The only rule that mattered. Until him. Lucky's Diner was a joke. Not the name, though that was ironic too, but the whole place. Cracked vinyl booths held together with duct tape and prayer. Fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. Coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since before I was born. But Mrs. Park, no relation to the man who would destroy my carefully constructed walls, let me eat for free. The regulars tipped decent. And nobody asked questions about the bags under my eyes or why I never sat down. It was a Thursday morning when he first walked in. 7:15 a.m. I remember the exact time because I just looked at the clock, counting down the hours until I could collapse. The bell over the door chimed. I didn't look up at first. Just called out my usual, be right with you, have a seat anywhere, while I finished refilling Mr. Henderson's coffee. But something made me glance toward the door. Instinct, maybe. Or the way the construction workers at the counter had gone dead silent. 3 men stood in the entrance. 2 of them were large, forgettable, the kind of men who exist to make other men look important. But the one in the middle, he wasn't tall, maybe 5 feet 10 inches, compact, perfectly still in a way that reminded me of a panther waiting to strike. He wore a dark coat over a darker suit, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His black hair was pushed back from a face that was almost too beautiful, sharp cheekbones, full mouth. Eyes so dark they looked black. Korean, I thought. And then, dangerous. I grew up on the South Side. I know what power looks like when it walks into a room. The way people get quiet, get careful, get small. This man owned the silence he created. He scanned the diner with those dark eyes, cataloging exits, threats, details. When his gaze landed on me, it stopped. Just for a second. Just long enough for something electric to pass between us. Then he moved to a booth in the corner, back to the wall, I noticed, and his men took positions nearby. Not sitting with him, guarding. I grabbed a menu and the coffee pot. "Morning," I said, setting the menu down. "Coffee." He looked up at me. This close, I could see his eyes weren't pure black. There were hints of amber near the pupils, warm against all that darkness. He studied my face like he was memorizing it. "Please," he said. His voice was low, controlled, a slight accent I couldn't quite place. "Black." I poured. "Know what you want or need a minute." "What do you recommend?" Honestly, I smiled, the automatic service industry smile I'd perfected over years. The pancakes are decent. Everything else is questionable. But Mrs. Park makes the bacon herself, and it's the best in Chicago. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Amusement. Pancakes and bacon, then. Good choice. I'll have it right out. I walked away feeling his eyes on my back. It should have been uncomfortable. Instead, it felt like standing near a fire, dangerous but warm. He came back the next day. Same time, same booth, same order. And the day after that, by the end of the first week, I'd learned a few things about him. His name was Gene. I heard one of his men say it. He took his coffee black, no sugar, and he drank it slowly, like he was savoring every sip. He read something on his phone in a language I didn't recognize. He never smiled, but sometimes the corner of his mouth would twitch when I said something that amused him. He tipped like he was trying to fix the economy single-handedly. $50 on a $12 check. The first time I tried to give it back. "You made a mistake," I said, holding out the bills. "No mistake. This is too much. It's exactly what your service is worth." I stared at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who tipped like money meant nothing, and felt something complicated twist in my chest. "I don't need charity," I said quietly. His eyes met mine. "It's not charity. It's respect." I kept the money, told myself it was practical, but something about the interaction stayed with me, warm and unsettling. By the second week, we had a routine. He'd arrive at 7:15. I'd pour his coffee without asking. He'd order pancakes and bacon. We'd exchange a few words about the weather, about the news, about nothing important. And I found myself looking forward to it. Found myself fixing my hair before his usual arrival time. Found myself smiling, really smiling, when the bell chimed and he walked in. It was stupid. He was clearly wealthy, clearly powerful, clearly operating in a world I wanted no part of. But he looked at me like I mattered, like I was the only person in the room worth seeing. No one had looked at me like that in a long time. 3 weeks in, my world collapsed. It started with a phone call during my afternoon shift at the dry cleaner. Mama's voice, shaking in a way I hadn't heard since the diagnosis. Baby, there's some men here. They say we owe money. That your daddy took out a loan before he left, and it's come due. My blood went cold. What men? Mama, what are you talking about? I don't know. They have papers. They're saying $40,000, Naomi. Where would we get $40,000? My father. Of course. The man who'd vanished when I was 16, leaving nothing but empty promises and apparently hidden debts. Even gone, he was still finding ways to destroy us. Don't sign anything, I said, already grabbing my purse. Don't agree to anything. I'm coming. By the time I got to Mama's apartment, the men were gone, but they'd left behind paperwork that made my hands shake. A loan from a company called Pacific Holdings, my father's signature, a balloon payment that had come due, and a deadline, 30 days. There's interest, Mama whispered, pointing at the numbers. So much interest. How did it get this big? I did the math in my head and wanted to scream. Even if I worked 24 hours a day, I couldn't make $40,000 in 30 days. They'd take the apartment. Mama would be on the street. Everything we'd fought for, everything we'd survived, gone. Because a man who hadn't loved us enough to stay had loved himself enough to use our names. That night, I sat in my tiny studio apartment and cried for the first time in years. Not pretty crying, the ugly kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and broken. I'd been so careful, done everything right, and it still wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The next morning, I went to work. What else was there to do? The diner opened at 6. The coffee needed to be made. The bacon wasn't going to fry itself. I moved through the motions on autopilot, smiled at customers, refilled cups, wrote down orders, tried not to think about the countdown clock in my head. 29 days, 28, 27. Gene came in at 7:15 like always. I poured his coffee, set down the menu, started to walk away. Naomi. I stopped. He'd never said my name before. Hearing it in his voice, low, careful, like he was handling something fragile, made my chest tight. Yes. Sit down. It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite an order either. Something in between. I glanced around the diner. Mrs. Park was in the back. The breakfast rush hadn't started yet. I had a few minutes. I slid into the booth across from him. Gene studied my face with those dark eyes. You've been crying. I'm fine. That's not what I asked. I felt my composure crack. Just a little. Just enough. It's nothing. Family stuff. I'm handling it. Are you? Yes. My voice came out sharper than I intended. I'm handling it. I always handle it. That's what I do. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, Pacific Holdings. I went still. What? The company that holds your father's debt. Pacific Holdings. His expression didn't change. I know about it. How? I couldn't breathe. How do you know about that? Because I own Pacific Holdings. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to make sense of what he was saying. This man, this beautiful, dangerous man who drank coffee at my diner every morning. You, I whispered. You own the debt. I acquired the company last year. I didn't know about your father's loan until recently. Jin's voice was calm, measured. When I learned the connection, I wanted to tell you myself. Connection? What connection? You, Naomi. You're the connection. He leaned forward slightly. I've been coming here for 3 weeks. You've been serving me coffee while I held your family's debt without knowing it. That seemed, you paused, wrong. I felt sick. All those mornings, all those conversations, all those moments where I'd felt seen, felt valued. Was this a game? My voice was hollow. Coming here, talking to me, making me think. I couldn't finish. No. The word was sharp, certain. I came here because I wanted to. Because you're extraordinary and I wanted to know you. The debt is, he exhaled. Coincidence. A terrible one. Right. I stood up, my hand shaking. And you just happened to acquire a company that held my father's debt. Just happened to show up at my diner. Just happened to. I didn't know. He stood too, and for the first time, I saw something crack in his composure. Naomi, I swear to you, I didn't know until 3 days ago. My people were reviewing accounts. Found the name Carter. Found your mother's address. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Well, my laugh was bitter. Now I know. I turned to walk away. The debt is forgiven. I stopped. I erased it this morning, Jean said to my back. The $40,000, the interest, all of it, gone. Your mother won't receive any more notices. No one will come to her door. Slowly I turned around. Jean stood there, perfectly still, watching me with those dark eyes. I don't want your charity, I said. It's not charity. Then what is it? The right thing to do. He took a step toward me. Your father's debt isn't your burden. You shouldn't lose your home because a man who abandoned you made bad choices. So I shook my head. You just make $40,000 disappear? Just like that? Yes. Why? Because I can. Because it's wrong. Because he stopped, something shifting in his expression. Because I don't want you to hurt. And if I can stop it, I will. And that's when I felt it. Rage. Not gratitude. Not relief. Pure, burning rage. No. Jean blinked. No. I don't want it. I moved toward him, anger making me bold. I didn't ask for your help. I didn't ask you to fix my problems. I've been handling my own problems my whole life, and I don't need some rich man to swoop in and save me. Naomi, you think you're being kind? I was close to him now, close enough to smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. You think I should be grateful? All you've done is prove that my problems are nothing to you. That $40,000, money that was going to destroy my mother's life, is pocket change. You erased it like it was nothing. Because to me it is nothing. Exactly. My voice cracked. Exactly. And that's why I can't accept it. Because I will not owe you. I will not be in debt to a man I barely know. I will not spend the rest of my life wondering when you'll come to collect. Jin's expression shifted. Something I couldn't read passed through his eyes. You think I want something from you. Everyone wants something. Not me. He said it quietly. Not from you. I don't believe you. We stood there, inches apart, both breathing hard. The air between us crackled with tension, anger, attraction, something complicated and electric. Then let me prove it, Jean said. How? I'll stay away. You'll never see me again. The debt stays erased. That's not about you. It's about fixing what shouldn't have happened in the first place. But I'll go. You can pretend this never happened. He meant it. I could see it in his face. He would walk out that door and never come back, all because I asked him to. And I realized with sudden terrible clarity that I didn't want that. But I wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. I need time, I said, to think. Jean nodded once. Take all the time you need. He left, and I spent the next 2 weeks trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. So that brings us back to where we started. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Couldn't stop wondering. Couldn't stop feeling like I'd thrown away the only person who'd ever really seen me. So I did something stupid. Something dangerous. Something that should have got me killed. I spent those 2 weeks tracking down who he really was. Park Jin-soo. Not just wealthy. not just powerful, the head of the Korean Mafia's Chicago operations, the man who controlled half the city's underground economy, the man who'd erased my debt and asked for nothing in return, the man I couldn't forget. I scraped together $40,000. Don't ask how. Payday loans. Sold everything I owned that was worth anything. Borrowed from friends who had nothing to spare. I was going to owe people for years, but I was going to owe him nothing. I walked into his restaurant, the one everyone knew belonged to him, the one where his men watched and waited, and I threw his money back in his face. That's where we came in. Bills scattering across the table, his men reaching for weapons, the entire room holding its breath, and Jean just smiling. "Sit down, Naomi," he said, after his men had lowered their guns. After the silence had stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat. "Let me tell you why you're wrong." I'm not wrong. I was still standing, still shaking, still furious. I'm not some damsel you get to rescue. I'm not a project. I'm not. You're magnificent. That stopped me. You tracked me down, Jean said, wonder in his voice. You found out who I was, what I am, and instead of running, you walked into my restaurant in front of my men and threw money at me. He shook his head slowly. Do you have any idea how insane that is? I don't care what. No one has ever done that. He stood, and his men tensed, but he waved them off. No one has ever refused me. No one has ever looked at me without fear. He walked toward me, slow, deliberate. And you're shaking with anger, not terror. You came here to tell me I don't get to save you. Because you don't. I know. He stopped in front of me, close enough to touch. I know I don't. That's what makes you extraordinary. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be angry, insulted, dangerous. Instead, he was looking at me like I'd given him a gift. Keep your money, he said quietly. Pay off whatever loans you took to get it. The debt stays erased. That's not negotiable. I won't profit from your father's mistakes. I can't just. You can. His hand came up, slowly giving me time to pull away. His fingers brushed my cheek, gentle as a whisper. You can accept that sometimes people do things without wanting payment. You can accept that I saw you, really saw you, and I want nothing except to know you better. Why? The word came out broken. Why me? Because you tried to give back a $50 tip. Because you smile at customers who don't deserve it. Because you're drowning and you've never once asked anyone to save you. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Because you're the first person in 10 years who's made me feel something other than empty. I should have walked away. Should have taken my money and my pride and left. Instead, I said, I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. Jin's mouth curved, just slightly. But I'd like to figure it out, if you'll let me. And God help me, I said yes. He did more than prove himself. Over the next few weeks, Jin didn't just leave my father's debt erased. He had his lawyers review my mother's medical bills. Every charge, every procedure, every inflated cost. They found $43,000 in billing errors, overcharges, duplicate fees, things that never should have been on the bill. The hospital apologized, reduced the balance, lowered the interest rate to 0. I cried when I got the paperwork. Not because someone had saved me, because I'd been right all along. I'd been paying for things I never owed, fighting a battle that was rigged from the start. Jean sat with me in my tiny apartment while I cried. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't say, I told you so. Just sat there, solid and patient, until I was done. Thank you, I said finally. You did this yourself. I just helped you see what was always true. You were being taken advantage of. You deserved better. I looked at him. This man who'd become so important so quickly. Why do you care so much? Because you matter. Because this is what people should do. Help each other. Because he hesitated. Because I've never met anyone like you, and I don't want to let you go. You barely know me. Then let me learn. They moved slowly after that. Naomi insisted on it. She wasn't going to be the girl who fell for the rich guy and lost herself. If this was going to happen, it would happen on her terms. Jean accepted every boundary she set. When she said she wanted to keep working at the diner, he didn't argue. When she said she wasn't ready to meet his people, he waited. When she said she needed time to process everything, the debt, the revelation, the way her whole world had tilted, he gave her space. But he was there. Every morning at 7:15. Coffee black, pancakes and bacon. That small smile that was only for her. You know you don't have to keep coming here, she told him one morning, about a month in. You must have better things to do than eat mediocre pancakes. There's nothing better than this. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Seeing you is the best part of my day. Jean, I mean it. He looked up at her, those dark eyes warm with something that made her chest tight. Before you, I had routine. Now I have something to look forward to. Naomi didn't know what to say to that. So she refilled his coffee and tried not to think about how much she looked forward to it too. Their first real date happened 2 weeks later. He asked if she wanted to get dinner after her shift. Somewhere she chose, anywhere she wanted. She picked a tiny Korean restaurant on the south side, not because she was trying to test him, but because she'd always wanted to try it and never had someone to go with. Jin's face when they walked in was priceless. You brought me to get Korean food. Is that weird? I thought. It's perfect. He smiled, really smiled, and she saw dimples she didn't know he had. My mother used to make food like this. I haven't had it in years. They ate for hours. Jean ordered for them in Korean, rapid and comfortable, and the owner, a tiny woman in her 70s, beamed at him like he was a long-lost son. The food kept coming. Banchan, bulgogi, jjigae, things Naomi couldn't name, but couldn't stop eating. You like it? Jean asked, watching her devour her third helping of something spicy and delicious. This is the best thing I've ever eaten. I'll tell Mrs. Kim. She'll adopt you. By the end of the meal, Mrs. Kim had indeed practically adopted Naomi. She'd patted her cheeks, declared her too skinny, need more eating, and sent them home with enough food for a week. She likes you, Jean said as they walked to his car. She likes that I eat. Korean mothers show love through food. The fact that you appreciate it, he shook his head. You have no idea how rare that is. Most women I've dated pick at salads and worry about calories. Then you've been dating the wrong women. He looked at her, something soft and wondering in his expression. I know. Meeting her mother was a production. Mrs. Carter had opinions about men. Strong opinions, formed through years of being let down, being left, being expected to hold everything together while men fell apart or disappeared. She'd raised Naomi alone after Naomi's father left, working 2 jobs, never complaining, never showing weakness. She was also fiercely protective of her daughter. He's coming for Sunday dinner, Naomi said, bracing for impact. The Korean man? The one who paid off your father's debt. He didn't. I didn't let him. It's complicated, Mama. Hom. Mrs. Carter's expression was unreadable. He rich? Yes. Powerful? Yes. Dangerous? Naomi hesitated. In some ways. And he likes you? Yes. Mrs. Carter was quiet for a long moment. Then, tell him 2 o'clock, and tell him I'm making my chicken, so he better come hungry. Jean arrived at 1:45 with flowers for Mrs. Carter and a quiet nervousness Naomi had never seen in him before. This man who commanded rooms, who made grown men flinch. He was nervous about meeting her mother. "She's going to love you," Naomi whispered. "She's going to interrogate me. That's how she shows love." The interrogation was thorough. Mrs. Carter asked about his family, his business. He was vague, but honest about its complexity, his intentions, his timeline, his thoughts on marriage, children, faith, and the proper way to season cast iron. Jean answered everything. Carefully, respectfully. He didn't try to impress her with money or power. He just talked to her, like she mattered, like her approval actually meant something. When dinner was over, he stood up and started clearing plates. "Sit down," Mrs. Carter said. "You're a guest." "My mother taught me that guests help clean up." Jean continued gathering dishes. "It's disrespectful to let the host do all the work." He washed every dish by hand, dried them and put them away, asked where things went instead of assuming. After he left, Mrs. Carter sat with Naomi in the kitchen, drinking tea. "That man has good hands," her mother said finally. "Strong, worker's hands, even if he doesn't have to work." "Mama, I'm just saying, a man who washes dishes is a man who understands what matters." She paused, stirring her tea. "He looks at you like you're the only thing in the room worth seeing." "I know. Your father never looked at me like that. Not once in 15 years. Mrs. Carter met her daughter's eyes. "Don't let that one go, baby. Men like that don't come around twice." The weeks turned into months. Winter softened into spring. Naomi learned the rhythm of Jin's life. The early morning calls he couldn't explain. The late nights he came to her exhausted. The way he sometimes went quiet for days when something was wrong in his world. She didn't push, didn't demand answers. She wasn't ready to hear. He learned her rhythms too. The way she stress-baked when she was anxious, cookies at 2 a.m., bread dough punched with frustration. The songs she sang when she thought no one was listening. The way she talked to her grandmother's photo every Sunday morning, updating her on life like she was still there. "You were close," Jean said one day, watching her put fresh flowers by the photo. "She raised me as much as my mother did. Taught me to bake. Taught me to stand up for myself." Naomi touched the frame gently. "She died when I was 19. Sometimes I still reach for my phone to call her. What would she think of me?" Naomi looked at him. This man who'd become so central to her life, who fit into her small apartment like he'd always belonged there. "She would have made you prove yourself," she said honestly. "Put you through the ringer. Watched how you treated me when you thought no one was looking." She smiled. "And then she would have loved you. Because you're good, Jean. Even if you don't believe it. Even if the world tells you different. You're good." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe. Hope. "I've done things that aren't good. I know. Things I can't tell you about. I know that too. And you still," he stopped. "You still think I'm good." "I think you're trying to be." She moved closer, took his hand. "That's all any of us can do." 3 months into whatever they were doing, Jean took Naomi to his home for the first time. She'd expected something cold, sterile, the kind of modern penthouse that looked like a museum and felt like nothing. Instead, she found warmth. The apartment was large, of course it was, but it was lived in. Books everywhere. A kitchen that had clearly been used. Photos on the walls. Jean as a child, a woman who must be his mother, an older man with Jin's eyes. "My parents," Jean said, following her gaze. "They died when I was 22. Car accident. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." But his voice was tight, and Naomi understood that some grief never really goes away. "Tell me about them." So he did. His mother, who loved gardening and burned every meal she tried to cook. His father, who built the business from nothing, who taught Jean that power was a responsibility, not a right. The way they argued and laughed and loved each other so fiercely that everyone around them felt warmed by it. "I want that," Jean said quietly. "What they had. I've never found it, never let myself look for it. But then you," he turned to her. "You threw money back in my face because you didn't want to owe anyone. You told me your problems weren't my problems to solve. You looked at me like I was just a man, not a name, not a bank account. Just Jean. Just Jean." He smiled, soft and rare. "No one's ever seen me like that." Naomi moved toward him, took his hand. "I see you." He kissed her then, finally, after months of wanting. It was gentle at first, careful, like he was asking permission even now. Then it wasn't gentle at all. She learned his world slowly. The business meetings he couldn't tell her about. The phone calls he had to take at 2 a.m. The men who surrounded him, loyal and dangerous and utterly devoted. The way people looked at him. Fear, respect, something close to worship. The first time she saw that side of him, they were leaving a restaurant when a man approached. Aggressive, drunk, something about money owed, debts unpaid. Jin's entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished. What remained was cold, controlled, terrifying. "You have 30 seconds to walk away," he said. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. The man walked away, almost ran. Jean turned back to Naomi, and she saw the moment he braced himself. For her fear, her rejection, her realization that she'd gotten in too deep. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Are you?" He blinked. You saw. I saw you protect yourself." She took his hand. "I grew up on the South Side, Jean. I know what the world looks like. I know there are rules I don't understand and situations I can't help with. I'm not naive." "I know you're not." "Then stop waiting for me to run." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." The bakery conversation happened at month 5. They were in Jin's apartment. It had become their place more than her tiny studio when he handed her a folder. "What's this?" "An idea. Just look." Inside were documents, business plans, financial projections, a lease agreement for a storefront on the north side. Naomi stared at the papers. A bakery. Her bakery. The dream she'd whispered about late at night when she forgot to guard herself. "I'm not buying it for you," Jean said quickly. "I know how you feel about that. This is an investment. Standard terms. You pay me back when you're profitable." "Jean, just listen." He sat beside her. "I know you've been testing recipes. I've tasted them. Your lemon bars made my head of security cry, and that man doesn't have emotions. You're talented, Naomi. Truly talented. And you've been working yourself to death for 3 years, paying off someone else's mistakes." His hand found hers. "You said you didn't want me to save you. I'm not. I'm offering you a chance to save yourself. Faster. Better. The way you deserve." He paused. "You can say no. You can throw this folder in my face like you threw my money. I won't be hurt." "You'd be a little hurt." "Maybe a little." He smiled. "But I'd understand." Naomi looked at the folder, at the projections someone had carefully calculated, at the location, a corner spot with good foot traffic and a kitchen big enough to actually work in. "Why do you believe in me so much?" she whispered. "Because I see you, the real you, the one who works 3 jobs and never complains, the one who sends money to her mother every month even when she can barely afford rent, the one who smiles at customers who don't deserve it because that's just who she is." His voice dropped. "I see someone extraordinary pretending she's ordinary." And I want the world to see her too. Naomi felt tears burn her eyes. I can't promise it'll work, she said. I know. I might fail. You won't. But even if you did, I'd still believe in you. She looked at him, this man who'd become her anchor, her champion, her home. Okay, okay, I'll do it. I'll open the bakery. She laughed, tears spilling over. God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Jean pulled her close, and she felt him shake with relief or joy or some combination of both. Thank you. For what? For letting me help. For trusting me. He pulled back, wiped her tears with his thumb. I love you, Naomi. She'd known it was coming, had felt it building between them for months. But hearing it, say it again. I love you. I've loved you since you tried to give me back a $50 tip. I've loved you since you threw money in my face and demanded I earn your trust. I love your stubbornness and your pride and your refusal to be saved. I love you too. The words came easily because they were true. I love that you wash dishes and remember my coffee order and look at me like I matter. I love that you're terrifying to everyone except me. You don't find me terrifying? Sometimes, when you smile. He laughed, really laughed, and kissed her until neither of them could breathe. Does it scare you, he asked one night, what I am? Naomi thought about it honestly. Sometimes, but not the way you think. How then? I'm scared of losing you. She touched his face. You live in a dangerous world. Every time you walk out the door, I don't know if you're coming back. That scares me. I'll always come back to you. You can't promise that. I can. His voice was fierce, because you're the only thing I've ever wanted more than power, the only person I've ever wanted more than control. I would burn my empire to the ground before I let anything take me from you. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. 6 months in, Jean asked her to quit her jobs. No, Naomi. No, she said it firmly. I'm not going to be your kept woman, Jean. I'm not going to sit in your apartment and wait for you to come home. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm asking. Then what are you asking? He pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, business plans, financial projections, lease agreements. A bakery, he said. Your bakery. The one you told me you wanted to open someday. Naomi stared at the papers. A location on the north side. Equipment lists. Projected costs. I'm not buying it for you, Jean continued. I'm investing. You pay me back when you're profitable. Standard terms. But I know you've been baking for Mrs. Park on the side, testing recipes, dreaming about this. So dream out loud. Let me help you make it real. Why? Because you're extraordinary. Because your lemon bars made my head of security cry, and that man has killed people. Jean smiled. Because I want to watch you succeed. Because I love you. She'd known it was coming, had felt it building between them. But hearing it, say it again. I love you. He stepped closer. I've loved you since you tried to give me back a $50 tip. I've loved you since you threw my money in my face and demanded I earn your trust. I love your stubbornness and your pride and your refusal to be saved. I love that you see me, really see me, and you stay anyway. I love you too. The words came easily because they were true. I love that you wash dishes and listen to my mother and remember my coffee order. I love that you're terrifying to everyone except me. I love, her voice broke. I love that you never made me feel small, even when you could have, even when it would have been easy. Jean pulled her close. You're not small. You're everything. The bakery opened 8 months later. The 8 months between saying yes and opening day were the hardest of Naomi's life and the best. There was the location to secure. Negotiations with landlords who looked at her like she was a joke until Jin's lawyer appeared, and suddenly everything became very cooperative. Permits, licenses, health inspections, 1,000 forms that made her head spin. There was the renovation, tearing out old fixtures, installing new equipment, painting walls at 2 a.m. because the contractors had fallen behind and opening day was approaching. Jin showed up one night with coffee and a paintbrush. "You don't have to do this," Naomi said. "I want to." He was already rolling up his sleeves. "Where do you want me?" They painted until sunrise. Jin ended up with more paint in his hair than on the walls. And Naomi laughed so hard she cried. "You're terrible at this," she said. "I'm adequate at this. You're just a perfectionist." "I'm not," she looked at the walls. At the streak where he'd gotten distracted and smudged the corner. "Okay, I'm a perfectionist. But in my defense, this is my dream. I want it to be perfect." Jin set down his paintbrush, pulled her close despite the mess they were both covered in. "It will be, because you're doing it." There was the menu to finalize, recipes to test and retest, suppliers to find, staff to hire. Naomi hired 3 people, all women from her neighborhood, all struggling the way she'd struggled. She paid them fairly, treated them with respect, taught them everything she knew. "You're building something," Jin said one night, watching her review applications. "I'm trying." "No, I mean," he gestured at her notes, her careful plans, her consideration of each candidate. "You're building something that's going to change people's lives. Not just yours, theirs." Naomi hadn't thought of it that way. But looking at the names on the applications, single mothers, women trying to start over, people who just needed a chance, she realized he was right. "I know what it's like," she said quietly, "to need someone to believe in you. Now you get to be that person for someone else." Opening day was chaos. Beautiful, terrifying, overwhelming chaos. The line stretched around the block. By 8 a.m., Naomi had no idea how. She hadn't advertised, hadn't promoted, had just quietly put a sign in the window announcing the date. "Your boyfriend might have mentioned it to some people," her assistant manager Keisha said, smirking. "Jin, don't be mad. He just told a few hundred of his closest friends." Naomi looked out at the line, at the men in expensive suits alongside the neighbors from her mother's building, at Mrs. Kim from the Korean restaurant, holding a gift basket, at the regulars from the diner who'd come to support her, and at Jin, standing in the corner, watching her with that soft expression he only showed her. "I'm going to kill him," she said. "After you serve these customers," Keisha said. "Get moving, boss." They sold out by noon. Everything. Every croissant, every muffin, every loaf of bread. Naomi's lemon bars went in the first hour. Jin's security chief bought 6 dozen. By closing time, Naomi was exhausted. Her feet ached. Her hands were raw. She hadn't eaten since 5 a.m. She'd never been happier in her life. "You did it," Jin said, appearing with champagne he'd somehow kept cold all day. "We did it." She gestured at everything. The empty display cases, the satisfied customers still lingering, the staff who'd worked so hard. "I couldn't have done this alone." "You could have. It just would have taken longer." "Jin." I know. He smiled. "You don't need me. You never did. But I'm glad you let me be part of it anyway." Her mother arrived as they were cleaning up, hugged Naomi so tight she couldn't breathe, cried into her shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud." "Your grandmother," Mrs. Carter's voice broke. "She always knew you'd do something like this. Always said you had the gift. And look at you now." Naomi cried too, let herself be held like she was a child again. "Thank you, Mama, for everything, for never giving up on me. Never." Mrs. Carter pulled back, wiped her daughter's tears. Never, ever. You're my heart, Naomi. Watching you succeed is all I ever wanted. Jean stood back, giving them space. But when Mrs. Carter finally released Naomi and turned to him, she pulled him into a hug too. Thank you, she said quietly, for believing in her when she didn't believe in herself. She always believed, Jean said. She just needed someone to remind her. Naomi called it Carter's. No fancy name, just her name, on a door, on a dream she'd built with her own 2 hands. Jin's money helped. She wasn't too proud to admit that anymore. But every recipe was hers. Every decision was hers. Every early morning and late night, hers. Her mother cried at the grand opening. Jean stood in the corner, watching her with that soft expression he only ever showed her, surrounded by men in black suits who were learning to appreciate croissants. I'm proud of you, Mrs. Carter whispered, hugging her daughter. Your grandmother would be so proud. Mama, don't make me cry. I have customers. Let them wait. This is important. Her mother pulled back, looked at her with shining eyes. You did this, baby. Not that man, not me, not anyone else. You. Naomi looked around her bakery. The exposed brick she'd chosen. The vintage display cases she'd refinished. The kitchen where she'd make things that brought people joy. Yeah, she said softly. I did. 1 year later, Jean proposed. Not in the bakery. Not at a restaurant. In his apartment, on a random Tuesday night, while Naomi was stress testing a new recipe and had flour in her hair. Marry me. She looked up from her dough. What? Marry me. He was holding a ring. Simple, elegant, not too big because he knew her. I don't have a speech. I had one. But I forgot it all because you have flour on your nose and you've never been more beautiful and I can't wait anymore. Jean! I know it's fast. I know your world and my world don't make sense together. I know there are 1,000 reasons to say no. He knelt in front of her, this powerful, dangerous man, on his knees in his kitchen, looking at her like she was the center of the universe. But I also know that I can't imagine my life without you in it. I know that I wake up every day grateful that you threw my money back in my face. I know that I want to spend the rest of my life earning you, because you're not something anyone gets to just have. You're someone who has to choose. His voice cracked. Choose me, please. Naomi looked at him. This man who'd changed everything. This man who'd seen her when she was invisible and loved what he saw. Yes. Yes. Yes, you ridiculous, beautiful man. She was laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring on her finger. Perfect fit, of course, because he noticed everything. And then he kissed her and she tasted salt from her own tears and joy so bright it burned. 2 years later, Naomi stood in the kitchen of their home. Not the penthouse, a real house with a yard and a kitchen big enough for her to bake in, watching the snow fall outside. Her mother was in the living room, arguing with Jin's aunt about the best way to make sweet potato pie. Their voices rose and fell in comfortable conflict, the kind that came from family, real family, messy and loud and full of love. Jean appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. His hand settled on her stomach, round now with their first child. How are you feeling? Fat, happy, exhausted. She leaned back against him. Perfect. That's my line. I'm stealing it. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the snow, feeling the baby kick, listening to their families blend and clash and become something new. You know what I was thinking about? Naomi said, tell me. That morning, at the diner, when you told me you'd erased my father's debt. She turned in his arms to face him. I was so angry. I remember. If I hadn't been angry, if I'd just said thank you and taken the money, we wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be you. Jean touched her face. Your anger is what made me fall in love with you. Your pride, your refusal to be saved. He smiled. You taught me that love isn't about fixing someone. It's about standing beside them while they fix themselves. When did you get so wise? I married a wise woman. Some of it rubbed off. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent. She's going to be stubborn, Naomi said. Like her mother. Good. Stubborn women change the world. He kissed her forehead. You certainly changed mine. From the living room, her mother's voice rang out. Naomi, come tell this woman that sweet potatoes need nutmeg. Coming, Mama. She kissed Jean quickly and went to mediate between their families. This beautiful chaos she'd built, one choice at a time. And standing there in her kitchen, in her house, in her life, surrounded by the people who loved her, Naomi finally believed what Jean had been telling her all along. She was perfect, not because she'd changed, but because she'd found someone who saw the truth from the very beginning. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Every like and comment helps bring you more stories about love, strength, and the power of being truly seen. Drop a comment below. What was your favorite moment? Was it when Naomi threw the money back in Jin's face? When her mother gave her blessing? When Jean proposed in their flower-covered kitchen? More stories coming soon. Until next time, remember, you don't need to be saved. You just need someone who believes in you while you save yourself.